From glacier to whale, life connecting all the dots with small silver schools. Suppose a friend invites you on a tour of the waters of Glacier Bay National Park. What creatures would you be most excited to see? Some popular favorites here are tufted puffins, harbor seals, stellar sea lions, and of course, humpback whales. But what if I told you there are some creatures that are just as important to the character of Glacier Bay, which go almost entirely unnoticed? I'm Ranger Brian, and today we're going to talk about some of these often underappreciated creatures. Forage fish. What they are, why they choose Glacier Bay, and the role they play in making the marine food web work. So, what exactly is a forage fish? Well, forage fish are abundant fish that swim in vast schools and are preyed upon by many species of seabirds, marine mammals, and other fish. They provide important ecosystem functions by transferring energy from primary producers to higher trophic levels. Put simply, they are a critical link in the food web, taking energy from plankton and condensing it for all of our favorite marine predators, like sea lions, whales, and puffins. There are many different species of forage fish. Can you think of any? Maybe sardines or anchovies come to mind. Today, we'll talk about 4 species that are important to Glacier Bay: northern lampfish, capelin, Pacific sandlance, and Alaska pollock. Before we go any further, I think we need to talk about plankton. The word plankton comes from the Greek word planktos, which means wandering. I think of plankton as drifters. Anything that can't swim against the current is plankton. There are 2 basic types of plankton: phytoplankton, which make or produce their own energy from the sun, like plants, and zooplankton, which have to eat or consume their energy, like us, animals. So, where do forage fish come into this? Well, after hatching, fish larvae are so small that they just get tossed around in the current, which means they're planktonic, zooplankton. Many ocean creatures start their lives as zooplankton. Now, think about your favorite restaurant. What do you like about it? Is the food consistent and delicious? Do they serve big portions? Or maybe make a dish you can't get anywhere else? Well, just like you, humpback whales, migrating seabirds, and all sorts of marine predators have their favorite feeding grounds, and many return to Glacier Bay year after year because their favorite foods are found here in large quantities. And that's because Glacier Bay is a remarkably productive place. And that all starts with its smallest inhabitants. The combination of Glacier Bay's many inlets, varied seafloor topography, plus large, rapid tidal swings have the powerful effect of bringing up cold water and nutrients from the depths of the fjords to where the light penetrates the water and allows phytoplankton and other primary producers to bloom in the long daylight hours of the Alaskan summer. This upwelling also brings along the northern lampfish. Northern lampfish have small, light-producing organs called photophores down their body. In other parts of their range, these small, oily fish spend their days at depths from 200 to 1,000 meters, only coming to the surface to feed by night. But in Glacier Bay, the strong tidal churn brings them up from the depths and makes them available to marine predators throughout the day. These fatty treats help keep the harbor seals plump and give seabirds energy so they can focus on nesting and raising their young. As you motor up bay towards the glaciers, you might catch a whiff of cucumber in the salty spray. That smell is not coming from any fruit or vegetable, but actually from a school of Pacific capelin. Glacier Bay is a nursery area for capelin, and potentially a cold water refuge for the species. Researchers consider capelin to be bellwether of climate change. They nearly disappeared from the Gulf of Alaska after a shift to warmer temperatures during the marine heat wave known as the blob from 2013 to 16. These silvery little fish prefer habitat near tidewater glaciers, where the water is cooler, rich with minerals from glacial silt, has more oxygen from melting glacier ice, and an abundance of phytoplankton. That's also likely why we have a prominent colony of black-legged kittiwakes on the cliffs near Marjorie Glacier. Pacific sandlance are another important forage species which find their habitat of choice in Glacier Bay and use it as a nursery. These thin fish have no swim bladder to help them control their buoyancy, so they need sandy banks that they can rest in at night and to dive headfirst into to take cover from predators. The sandlance is the most important fish in the diet of nesting marbled murrelets, and is a major calorie contributor to the diet of almost anything in the park that eats fish. The most commonly found forage fish in the park is definitely Alaska pollock. Glacier Bay provides nursery habitat for these fish as well, supporting them through their early life stages until many move into the Gulf of Alaska as adults. Pollock make up over half the diet of stellar sea lions. They're a significant food source for humans too. Out in the Gulf of Alaska and Bering Sea, Alaska pollock make up the largest commercial fishery in the United States. If you've ever had a fish stick, it was probably made of pollock. Park researchers have consistently spotted juvenile pollock throughout Glacier Bay. Forage fish populations can be sensitive to changes in their habitat, mostly to changes in the shores where they spawn, but also to changes in the temperature or composition of the water. Since Glacier Bay has a variety of forage species that live in different habitats, if there is a change that causes a decline in one species for a short period, there will still be others for predators to feed on. Having a variety of species makes the food web more resilient to changes in the climate or from the continued deglaciation of the park, which in turn makes Glacier Bay a more reliable food source for its residents and visitors. It's important to remember that we humans are the only species who concern ourselves with lines on a map, and that most of these creatures will migrate outside of Glacier Bay's boundaries for at least one phase of their life, connecting to populations in the ocean and the world at large. But since Glacier Bay protects this variety of habitats, as the world changes and we continue to monitor and make discoveries about these species, what we find here can be an important comparison point for other areas that are less protected. So consider this your invitation to visit Glacier Bay National Park and Preserve. And I understand if you're still more excited to see the puffins or humpback whales on your trip up bay. But I hope you remember what brings them here, and make sure to look for the smaller wildlife that make up the foundations of the food web, connecting glaciers to whales and beyond, and making Glacier Bay such inviting habitat for all of our favorite creatures.